You ready? Let's go. 2-minute daily devo for Friday, June 17th. I'm in the New Century Version today, and our verse of the day comes from the book of Isaiah, chapter 12, verse 2. Here's what it says. God is the one who saves me. I will trust him and not be afraid. The Lord gives me strength and makes me sing. This is a great verse and a great song from the book of Isaiah, and that's exactly what this is. If you go to the top of this chapter, in my Bible, it says a song of praise to God. And you have those little headings, and that's what this one says, and that's exactly what this is. If you look this up in commentaries and kind of Bible study stuff, they'll talk about this was a song of praise, a hymn that they were singing to God. You see, God's people at the time had been in and out of slavery and, in and out of being in captivity, and they had all these things that God had brought them out of. And every time they would sing these songs of praise to God. And that's exactly what they're doing here. And they're singing about how God is the one that rescues them. God's the one that saves them, and they don't need to be afraid because they can trust in him. Well, you know what? Here's what that means for us today. I don't know about you, but there are many times in my life that God has brought me out of trials, that God has brought me out of problems and issues. And you know what we have to be quick to do? To praise and worship God like they did here. The Israelites were quick to build altars and things to remind them, to sing these songs, to things to remind them about the faithfulness of God. And this is what you and I need to do. When God brings us through something, and he always does, we need to be quick to worship him and praise him and thank him for those things. That's really what altars were. They would build these altars when they were out in the wilderness, and then they'd be traveling around, and then they'd come back and they'd see these altars, and they could show their kids, hey, that was when God did this in my life. That was when God did this for us. Well, you and I, we need these things in our lives, these altars that we can point to and say, hey, you know what? God was faithful there, and I know that God is going to be faithful again because God is always faithful. He says here, it says God's the one that saves us, and if we trust in him, we don't need to be afraid. God is the one that gives us strength. The Lord is the one that gives us strength. I want to encourage you in your life. Think about the times that God has brought you faithfully through trials and tribulations and troubles. Have you stopped to praise and worship him? And if you did, and I'm sure you did, think back to those times. And maybe you're going through something difficult right now and think, you know what? God was faithful to me then. Let that be an altar. Because God is now going to be faithful to me again in this different situation, this problem, this trial that I'm in. If you're going through a sickness or something in your marriage or something in your family, something at school, whatever it is you're dealing with, God has been faithful, and God will be faithful again. And just like this last part of this verse says here in verse 2, let this be our prayer. The Lord gives me strength and makes me sing. All right? That's it, guys. I'll talk to you on Monday.